This is Laurie Sports Frederick. I'm Damon.
I'm Nathan.
And today we are going to finally do a non-NFL podcast. We're both huge NFL fans, so we've kind of concentrated on our wheelhouse. But I especially am a just sports nut altogether. So love the NBA, love college football, love college basketball. And we'll be doing those. So today is our first getting away from the NFL. Wanted to just do a little bit of I've been watching the NBA Draft since I was probably 10, 11 years old. Loving just that excitement of who's your team getting and being a big college basketball fan, like who these players that I've been watching over the years, what team are they going to go to. So I've been doing that for years. Love watching the NBA Draft. So I had to do a draft preview. Nate really only pays attention to the Thunder, so this is mostly going to be him talking to me about what I think, and hopefully you guys find it entertaining, maybe informational, and then that way a little primer for the draft that's coming up here next week.
All right. I think we'll go ahead and get started.
Okay.
Pick number 1 is Orlando.
Yeah, so Orlando, basically the consensus is it's going to be one of two players, Chet Holmgren from Gonzaga or Jabari Smith from Auburn. The interesting thing is most of the mock drafts have it Jabari Smith going number 1, Chet Holmgren going number 2. I think it's going to be switched around. For one thing, Orlando has Wendell Carter Jr., who was a center for the Bulls. They brought him in. They've had him been playing power forward. He seems to play much better at that position. So Jabari Smith is a power forward. Holmgren's a center. I think center is the way to go. Plus, Orlando's first-round pick from last year, Jalen Suggs, and Chet Holmgren are known to be very good friends and have very good chemistry together. They played on the AU circuits together. So even though a lot of mock drafts have Jabari Smith going there, I feel like Chet Holmgren is probably going to end up being the pick. Although either one's a good pick, they're both really good potential players.
All right. So, yeah, just fit-wise, you feel like that Chet's going to be
I think Chet's a better fit, and they're both good players. Only better fit because Wendell Carter Jr. can play either position, so whichever one they draft, they're still good. But I think it maximizes Wendell Carter Jr.'s potential to keep him at power forward.
Gotcha. Okay, and number 2, the Oklahoma City Thunder.
All right, so your Thunder. We've talked about this. The Thunder are a young team. They've not been very good.
No.
I think they are going to continue to not be very good because I don't think they want to be good yet. Because I think they're tanking one more year, but they're collecting talented young players and a bunch of draft picks, and sooner or later they're going to start making moves, but it's not yet. In fact, I think there's some rumors that they might even trade down this pick. Houston's supposed to be trying to trade up. There's some rumors they might trade down one spot, get extra picks, which would be the kind of thing that the Thunder GM likes to do, so possible. But if they pick here, they will take whoever Orlando doesn't between those two players that we mentioned at number 1. I personally feel like Jabari Smith would be the better pick for him. For them, I think he would pair perfectly with Josh Giddey, who they drafted last year. Those guys would complement each other very well. Jabari Smith is a good defender and a three-point shooter. Giddey, not quite the defender, but a playmaker who can dish out like to open three-point shooters. So I think that would be a great pairing. But if they get Chet Holmgren is a really good center, and that's a good building piece too. So either way, another young potential guy that could, it's towards the rebuild. It's just building talent, getting talented players together, and then once you get enough of those together, then you start figuring out who's the future superstars and who's the pieces to trade for future superstars. That's, I think, their game plan. So.
Yeah, it's a slow process.
I know it's not to your liking.
It's frustrating.
It's frustrating, and it's probably going to continue to be a slow process because I think they're going to tank again and try to get another top 3 pick next year.
Yeah, I wish they would get some veterans. But, yeah, so I think, personally, myself, I would definitely like to see the center. I would like to see the center be the one that gets drafted by us.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be one of the two. Either way, they're both really good players. Sure. Either way.
Personally, I would rather see that one.
Gotcha.
So. All right. Next is going to be Houston.
So, again, Houston made a trade this week to get an extra draft pick that gives them 3 draft picks in the first round, and the rumors are they're doing that to try to trade up into the first or second pick with the 2 teams ahead of them. Um, it's unclear who they want, but there's actually rumors that who they want is Paulo Banchero from Duke. That's who I have available to him at number 3 anyway, and who they will definitely pick if everything stays the same. I think they will definitely pick him. He's plays the same position that Wood plays, who's the player that they traded in the trade. So it makes sense that they would trade Wood and bring in Banchero to take his place. Banchero probably has the most upside of anybody in this draft, but he also has a little bit of a bust factor, or at least he might end up just being average if he doesn't fully reach that potential. But he has the potential to be a superstar. So could be a good pick, good night for Houston if he turns out to have that, reach that kind of potential down the road.
All right, next we got Sacramento at number 4.
Sacramento they are definitely rumored to trade this pick. The thought in Sacramento, they've been doing what the Thunder are doing now. They've been doing it for a long time, and they have some expiring salaries. The thought is they're going to package the 4th pick with an expiring salary to get another young star to team up with what they have. I think that the consensus, Jaden Ivey is a player that most people think will go number 4. There's a lot of teams that would like to get Jaden Ivey. He's a guard. Sacramento doesn't need guards. They got 2 young guards that they already are happy with. So they probably will try to make a trade. If they are unable to make a trade, I think that they will pick Keegan Murray. He's a power forward, and they're thin in the front court, so that would make sense. But most likely the 4 will be connected to Harrison Barnes or somebody like that, and traded for a young wing that's good. And OG Anunoby from Toronto is the biggest rumor out there, or possibly Atlanta's trying to trade up potentially with Hunter being the piece that could potentially go back to the Hawks. So I guess to Sacramento. So we'll see what happens with that, but a strong possibility that the trade will happen. And if a trade happens, it'll almost definitely be Jaden Ivey, who people are going for.
All right, number 5, we've got the Detroit Pistons.
All right, so the Pistons, another trade candidate. A lot of people think that a trade could happen here. The Pistons are rumored in a lot of different trade possibilities. If the Kings can't come up with a trade and end up taking Keegan Murray, then Jaden Ivey will be the subject of many trade rumors here again. Ivey doesn't fit with the Pistons' young star, Cunningham, so he's not a draft pick for them to take. So if for some reason he should slide to 5, a lot of possibility of a trade happening. Otherwise, I like them to take either Keegan Murray or Benedict Mathurin. They need a guy to replace Grant, who is in the last year of his contract, and most people expect him to be traded this offseason, either on draft night or afterwards. So taking a young forward that's a 3-and-D type guy like Grant is, and matching him up with the other young players makes a lot of sense. So that's where I would think one of those 2 directions.
Number 6, the Indiana Pacers.
Another team rumored in the trades. They really would like Jaden Ivey from what I hear. They're looking to put pieces together to move up. They have this, obviously you're not going to have to move up that far to go from 6 to 5 or 4. And they have a few tradable pieces that they could put in there as they're transitioning from a playoff team to a rebuild. They're still kind of shopping some of those playoff team, like Miles Turner, for example, is one that a lot of people are connecting. Possibly could go Miles Turner in the 6th pick to the Kings for the 4th pick, and maybe another young piece or another piece. So those kind of things. Malcolm Brogdon is another guy that could potentially be added to a trade for them to move up. Or there's also a chance that they could add one of those veterans and this pick for a young player, DeAndre Ayton, for example, the DeAndre Ayton trade. They could slightly be trading for Phoenix. Might sound like they're picking a guy, but it's actually Phoenix picking that guy. So outside of Jaden Ivey, some other names to look for here. Shaedon Sharpe is another guard, or Benedict Mathurin, who I mentioned with the Pistons, is another player that could possibly fit and give them shooting. if they do keep the pick and don't trade. Or it could be almost anybody because it could be part of a trade that won't be completed until later, especially the DeAndre Ayton possibility that's out there.
All right. Number 7 is Portland Trailblazers.
Trailblazers largely linked to trading again. They are looking at OG Anunoby as a player they want. They're looking at Detroit wanting Grant, so they could look to trade. They're wanting to put pieces next to Damian Lillard to get them back in the playoffs, so they're not necessarily wanting a young guy. If they can't work out a trade, then I think what they want, like to me, what makes the most sense, and especially this part of the draft, is to get a shooter next to the playmaker that is that Damian Lillard is. So kind of replacing McCollum, but with somebody that can do it more of a catch and shoot guy, because that McCollum fit was never great because they both needed to have the ball. So the guys that I'm looking at for that to fill that role, Benedict Mathurin, Dyson Daniels, AJ Griffin. Mathurin's from Arizona. Dyson Daniels is actually from Australia. And then AJ Griffin from Duke. Those are all guys that can shoot, that can play the wing, that are known to be willing defenders. So it could be a good fit next to Damian Lillard, or just to give him another piece to try to build around if they're unsuccessful in trading for a more veteran look, which is what they really want to do.
All right. Number 8 is New Orleans.
New Orleans, another one of these teams, is linked to trades. They could possibly trade back. They could possibly trade up. The word is they're not happy at 8. I think if they stay there, I think what makes the most sense is a center to pair with Zion Williams, and a shot blocking center at that. So Jalen Dunham from Memphis is the top center in the draft. Wouldn't be surprised there. Another way to go, maybe AJ Griffin, giving them a shooter on the outside to pair with, their team. They got some interesting athletes, but not a lot of really big knockdown three-point shooters right now. So I think AJ Griffin is a possibility there to fill that role if they don't like the center position. Or if they trade out, then those are probably the two names that people would be trading in to get, honestly, at this point.
All right. Next up is going to be number 9, San Antonio.
Yeah, the Spurs are interesting. They hardly ever draft in this area. They're kind of in a weird spot where they have been good for a long time, but then they're kind of in a rebuild mode right now. Typically, the Spurs like to go with veteran players. If somehow Keegan Murray was still available, if he slid, I think they would jump all over him, and because he kind of is a Spurs player. There's some rumors they might try to trade up to get Keegan Murray. There's some rumors they might try to trade back or use the 9th pick paired with like Jacob Poeltl or somebody else like that to trade for another young player, to pair with their young backcourt, like a good wing player. The same ones we've been mentioning, OG Anunoby, Grant from Detroit. So that's all possible. If they pick, I have them looking at, again, Jalen Durham is the best center in the draft. I think they could use that, especially Jacob Poeltl's in the last year of his contract. A lot of potential trade rumors there, so they could do that. Or Usman Dang is an interesting prospect. I think that they could possibly look at him. He seems a little bit like a Spurs player. He's young and he's still developing, but he kind of is like a jack of all trades type that like the Spurs like to do. And then the last but not least, the typical Spurs pick, Johnny Davis, is a veteran. He can shoot. He plays defense. So I think he would fit. I think Popovich would really like him as a player. It'd be a little bit of a reach at 9, but the Spurs have reached before for guys that they liked, and it pans out for them because they're just a really well-run organization. So, like I said, it's a little weird for them to be picking here, which is hard to broadcast what they're going to do because they don't always just go on talent. But I think those are 3 names that they could potentially look for.
All right. Number 10, we have Washington.
Yeah, Washington's a weird team. They're kind of stuck in this transition. They're hoping to keep Beals. If they lose Beals, then they're definitely going to need to have a guard to replace him. If they keep him, then you want a different type of player to complement him. They've drafted a lot of young guys that haven't necessarily been what they wanted yet. I think probably, there's always the prospect of trades like everybody else. Like there's a bunch of people talking about trades in this draft. There's definitely another team that's talking about it. Pairing this pick with one of the young players that maybe hasn't panned out and trying to get a veteran to keep Beals in the fold is one option. If they pick, I think Dyson Daniels who I mentioned earlier, he's from Australia. He's a playmaker that could be interesting next to Beals. Shaden Sharp or Johnny Davis are other guys that I could see maybe coming in and for different reasons. Sharp can run the offense and let Beals kind of play off of him, where Davis can let Beals run the offense and just be a shooter and a defender. But at this range, those are kind of the names that most people like, and they kind of fit next to Beals. So assuming that they don't make a trade, and then they also work as guys that they could potentially work to replace Beals if he moves on.
All right. Next, number 11, we have New York.
New York, another team that there's a lot of talk about trading, both potentially trading up, trading down, packaging a player, trying to bring in a player. This is the common theme of this draft. But if they pick, I think one of two options make a lot of sense for them. Malachi Branham, I know they brought him in for a workout, and he's a big-time three-point shooter. With what they have on their team right now, the young players they have, they could use a guy that's just going to be a catch-and-shoot guy. He's also a plus defender, so that works. Or at least has the potential to become a plus defender at the NBA level. He was a decent defender in college. Or if they go center, there's a lot of talk that their center, Robinson, is going to move on in free agency. Especially my guys, my Bulls. They're talking about trying to get him, so I like that. I hope that happens, or potentially could. So I can see them drafting a center here so that they can let him move on. It's not a big loss, and assuming that Jalen Durham is already off the board at that point, then I think Mark Williams from Duke would be a good fit here. He's a shot blocker, and I think he would fit with what they do pretty well. So, but it's very likely that they try to add this pick to Julius Randle and get another player. I think that's very likely.
All right, number 12, we have again the Oklahoma City Thunder.
So your Thunder again. I think all the rumors are that they want to trade this pick with either a future first round pick, or if they're able to get another pick in this draft, like trading down with the Rockets, they're wanting to trade this pick to get back in the top 10. So look for that to happen. But if that doesn't happen, I like Osman Dang or Malachi Branham for them. Or if those guys are off, then I'm going to butcher this guy's name. Chaya Ajabi from Kansas. He's a shooter, and I think he's a shooter and a defender. When you're building a young team, never hurts to have shooters and defenders. Even if he doesn't have a place in your team, they're always tradable. So I could see them going that route if they have to do it. But I think they really would like to trade, from what I'm hearing here. Now that we live in Oklahoma and get a lot of local stuff, I think that they'd like to trade up to try to get Dyson Daniels, who's the Australian point guard. He would fit with Giddey. They have a very similar style and very similar thing, and they actually come from the same program. Okay. So they're probably familiar with each other, I would assume. And they could play together they could play off of each other well, where they're kind of almost interchangeable. So you'd have two pieces that are very similar. And this is where the NBA is becoming. Positionless basketball, switching, changing. So, if they were able to trade up and get him, which I think is what they're trying to do, you had him, Giddey, and then either the center or the power forward. And now you got a really good young core to build around.
Yeah. That sounds good.
Yeah. Now, okay, so next is... I'm sorry, I'm stepping on you. Go ahead, do your thing.
Sorry. Next, number 13. Yeah, it gives me very little to do here, and then he just steps all over me. All right, number 13, we're going to go with Charlotte.
Charlotte. So Charlotte's interesting. They have 13 and 15. There's if a team's wanting to trade back and there's a player on the board that Charlotte wants, this is a good place for a trade to happen. Because 13 and 15, you can move up to 7, 8, 9 and give up 13 and 15 both. Charlotte's one of these teams that's like kind of young and old, not sure what they're doing, have some free agents, are talked about a lot of different trade potential rumors. So they're kind of all over the place. But I think if they pick, I like them going for Mark Williams, the center from Duke, if he's available. If he's not, then either Malachi Branham or Achai Agbajayi to get the shooter. The same thing I talked about with the other teams that I kind of put those guys as possibly working in. They could use a shooter. let LaMelo Ball, who controls their offense, have another guy to kick off to. And especially as Terry Rozier is getting older and that contract might not work for them long term, too much longer. I think getting a guy that can kind of fill that role, a scorer shooter, makes a lot of sense for them, assuming they don't trade the pick.
All right, number 14, we have Cleveland.
Yeah, Cleveland, crazily enough, is a team that's not rumored to be in the trade market with the pick. One of the few. They already have. They're just a young team. So I mostly just went 3-D with these guys: Osman Dang, Achaya Agbajai, or Jalen Williams. That's a new name here. He could be a little bit of a reach, but a lot of people think that he's got a lot of potential. He's coming from the G League. So those three guys are all kind of 3-D type potential guys. Like I said with Oklahoma City, when you're building a young team, you don't really have a specific like this is the thing. 3-D is a good way to go because they're always tradable and they're always useful. So I think they'll kind of go that route because they really have the other pieces in place that they need. It's just a depth in 3-D and then possibly use them as trade bait later. So that's what I would look for from Cleveland.
All right, number 15, we have Charlotte again.
So again, like if they don't do the trade, then here we go. If they don't do the trade and they don't draft Mark Williams, then I think here they will definitely try to get a center, which Walker Kessler would be the best available one. That would be considered a reach, but Jordan has reached before. He typically doesn't. I don't think he cares about what other people think, so he drafts what he wants. And I think Kessler is a former North Carolina player that transferred out. Jordan's probably familiar with him. I think that could be a potentially good pick. If they've already picked Mark Williams, then they definitely won't go that route. Then I think they look at the wings. So the Jalen Williams that I just talked about, and then also a new one, Marjan Beauchamp is another player. Where did he come from? I forget. Beauchamp. Oh, he's also from the G League. That's right. So these guys are. Jalen Williams isn't from the G League. I was confusing him. Jalen Williams is from Santa Clara. For those that don't watch a lot of college basketball, that's Gonzaga's conference, the conference that they just absolutely dominate. Very few people come out of there. Steve Nash is the exception. But so Jalen Williams from Santa Clara and Beauchamp from the G League are guys that have really, they did really well in the workouts, the pre-draft, the draft combine, and the workouts, and those names are kind of rising. So as 3-and-D type wings, these are the guys that I think could go if they don't go center at that pick.
All right, and number 16, we have Atlanta.
Atlanta, they're wanting to make trades. They're trying to figure it out. They've been a playoff team the last couple of years, but their pieces aren't fitting right. They don't like. I don't think they like the way their pieces fit. So they're going to make trades. Whether they trade, sign a big name free agent, do a sign and trade. If they trade for Rudy Gobert, if they trade their draft pick to move up with another piece attached to it. I think they're going to try to trade, and I would be surprised if they actually end up with a draft pick. But if they do draft, again, their pieces don't fit, so they can almost use anything other than just a flat-out scorer, which you're not going to get at this point anyway. So I think Jeremy Sochan, power forward from Baylor, would be probably the BPA at this point. And one of the names that they've really used a lot in the trade rumors is John Collins. He just signed an extension, but he doesn't seem to fit really well with their star. Do you know who their star player is?
I do not.
I was just testing you. He's from OU. No, he still doesn't know.
No.
Anyway, I'll let him look it up later. I'm not even. I know you guys all know who he is. Anyway, he would be a great fit. He's not a good fit with Collins, so that's why they're looking to trade him. But Jeremy Sochan is a power forward that could play that, so maybe you bring him in, and then if Collins is moved, then you have a potential bench player or guy that could take his place in the rotation. But I think mostly BPA. I don't think they have a specific need because they're trying to figure out, they're going to reimagine their team in some way. So.
All right. I don't know. I don't know much about basketball.
It's okay. It's okay.
I'm ready for the Thunder to do a little bit better so I can actually pay attention.
Yeah.
Anyways, number 17, we have Houston.
Houston. So Houston's interesting, as we talked about them with the third pick. They traded Christian Wood earlier to get the 30th pick from the Thunder. Um, there's a lot of thoughts that not from the Thunder. I'm sorry, that was not from the Thunder. From Dallas. There's a lot of thoughts that so that's the 26th pick. So there's a lot of thoughts they're going to try to package that to move up with the Thunder to the number 2, or maybe with the Magic to number 1 if those teams are interested in taking on extra picks. If not, then I would suspect they're going to try to package 26 and 17 to move up from here. Because I don't think that they're wanting all these draft picks. They've had a lot of draft picks the last few years. They got a lot of young players, and I don't know that they're wanting you to bring in 3 young players again. But if they do keep this pick, I think you're looking at wings again. So Achaya Ajabai, or man, I can't the Kansas kid, 3-and-D type, or Tari Eason. That's a new name. He's from LSU. He's another 3-and-D type, which is what I think they'll look to do. Both of those guys would pair well with Bonchero on the wing, so you could see that working out. They have 2 young guards already, so kind of the hole would be at that wing position for them. So if they keep it, that's probably where they'll go.
All right. Number 18, we have your Chicago Bulls.
My Chicago Bulls. Word is the Bulls are not happy with where they're at. They brought in some players. They don't feel like where they're picking, they're going to get the players they like in this draft. So I expect them. Our GM is an aggressive trader. I expect them to trade this pick. I know I've said that on almost every single pick, and it's probably going to happen almost every single pick. I mean, the NBA always has trades, and this year seems to be like the most tradable anywhere. I think they're going to package this pick with something. A lot of talk that they're packaging this pick with Kobe White to either move up in the draft with one of the teams that want to move back, especially a team that could use a point guard, Kobe White, or for another player that fits better in their rotation. Whether they're able to do that or not, I don't know. If they're not able to do it, I think Nikola Jovic, who is a foreign player, our GM really likes foreign players. When he was with Denver, they drafted a lot of foreign players. We've drafted a couple of foreign players since he's been with us. They do a good job of scouting him. Jovic is a 6'10", kind of multi-dimensional player. I could see him liking him. Personally, I like Tari Eason, who I had going to the Thunder. I like him as a pick, as a bench 3-and-D guy, which I don't think we have enough of right now. So I think that would be a need for us, especially if trades start to happen. But again, I don't know that we're going to pick here because the rumors are that he doesn't want to pick here, and he's been a very, very aggressive trader during his time in the NBA when he's been in charge of teams. So I would expect that to happen.
Number 19, we have Minnesota.
All right, Minnesota. Interesting. The only thing I could find when I was trying to figure out what Minnesota might want to do is it feels like they're ready to move on from D'Angelo Russell. Last year, they kind of had him playing more of a shooting guard. I think they're going to look for a point guard. There are not a lot of point guards in this draft, but this is actually a place where a point guard could go. And so there's 2 point guards that I think kind of fit in this time range. They'll probably take one of the 2. Ty Washington is more of a scoring guard. Kennedy Chandler is more of a distributor and a defender. So depending on what they're looking for, I would expect them to take one of those 2. I think Washington is more highly guarded prospect, so that'll probably be what they do. But Kennedy Chandler could be there. Washington is also, all these trades we're talking about, Washington could be gone by this point. I didn't include him in anything because I didn't see a natural fit. But there's teams that need point guards that could trade back in the draft and end up drafting Washington later. And then there's teams in the later part that need point guards that could trade up to this point, like possibly with the Bulls, and draft Washington. So he might not even be there at this point. Kennedy Chandler would be the next best choice. I'm guessing one of those 2 will be there, and that's what they'll probably do.
All right, we got number 20, San Antonio.
San Antonio again. This is where you're used to seeing San Antonio. So I'm going to give you your typical San Antonio draft picks here. Jeremy Sochan from Baylor, who I had the BPA earlier to Atlanta. If he doesn't go there, then I could see San Antonio picking up here. Or there's E.J. Liddell from Ohio State, or Jake Larvia from Wake Forest. These guys seem like very San Antonio type players. Jack of all trade types, willing defenders, can shoot the ball, can pass the ball. Both on the guys that have produced in college on the older side. A lot of teams shy away from those. San Antonio loves those guys because they want to just keep reloading and repeating. And then, if they're in the last year of their contract, then they trade them. So those guys seem like San Antonio type trades or prospects, I mean. So I'm going to slot those guys to San Antonio here.
All right, number 21, we have Denver.
All right, Denver. Much like Minnesota, I think Denver's in the market for a backup point guard. There's a lot of talk that Monte Morris is going to be involved in some trade talks this offseason. Might even be Monte Morris in this draft pick to move up to try to get a point guard. So Ty Washington and Kennedy Chandler being the 2 point guards that I mentioned for Minnesota, also probably the best 2 options here. If both those guys are gone, I could see E.J. Liddell also being an option for Denver, bringing a bench post player that can shoot threes. So when when the Joker's out there getting his playmaking on, E.J. Liddell in the corner hitting the 3 makes a lot of sense. So I could see that as a possibility as well.
All right, number 22, we've got Memphis.
Memphis, another team looking for a backup point guard. This is, we're at that point of the draft where backup is more what you're looking for than starter. So I had them Kennedy Chandler if he's still there. If he's not, maybe a little bit of a reach for Daniel Terry from Arizona. Terry had a really good season until he got hurt, and so there's some question marks about him because he got injured. But I think he has if he wouldn't have got hurt, he probably would have already been off the board by this point. So they're in a position where you're only looking for a backup. You can bring a guy in that maybe you can take a risk on. So I think that's a good possibility. If they don't go the point guard route, then some of the number names we've already mentioned, like they could just go with whoever falls to them, like Tari Eason, E.J. Liddell, who I mentioned earlier, Jalen Williams, Marshawn Beauchamp. Oh, so Marshawn Beauchamp is kind of a new name. No, we talked about him earlier. Yeah, so those guys that we all talked about earlier, those wing players, those 3-and-D types, if they don't think that the point guard is worth reaching at that point, then I can see them filling with the 3-and-D type. Like I said, with the other teams, you can never have enough of those. So,
all right, number 23, we have Philadelphia.
Yeah, Philadelphia. So Philadelphia is another team kind of like Atlanta where they just don't seem to work. And I think they're going to make some trades. I don't know if this draft pick will be involved in those trades or not. If they keep it, I think they go 3-and-D wing. So Beauchamp. We didn't mention Jaden. What's his name? Jaden Hardy yet. He's a G League. Well, we did, yeah. So Jaden Hardy's a G League guy. He could be in there. Or Blake Wesley's a new one. Blake Wesley, he's actually from South Bend.
Okay.
My son played AAU basketball with him at one point when they were like in 5th grade.
Wow.
So that's an interesting thing about Blake Wesley. But he went to Notre Dame, so homegrown guy, shooter, has the potential to turn into a good defender. So I think that's a possible fit there for that's 76ers need more shooting. He can provide that if those other guys are already gone.
All right, 24, we have Milwaukee.
Same thing, Milwaukee looking for shooters just because they already have those other pieces in place. So I think they're just looking for more 3-and-D guys that they can plug in, and if there's injuries, guys can step up. They're really in a position where they have a pretty well-constructed roster, which is why they've been so competitive the last couple of years. So I see them just going BPA, probably another wing, Beauchamp, Blake Wesley, Christian Braun from Kansas is another shooter wing type to add some shooting to your team. So I think those are the kind of names you'd be looking at for that pick.
All right, and number 25, we have San Antonio.
So San Antonio, again, they just, this is their 3rd pick in this draft now. I don't know if they'll do that. Most teams don't like to take 3 picks in one draft, so I almost would expect them to trade out of this pick and try to get a future pick. If there's somebody that a team wants to trade like their 1st round pick next year to get this pick, I could see San Antonio doing that. If they keep it, I think Bryce McGowan from Nebraska is a wing player that fits the San Antonio mold. Walker Kessler, if he's still on the board as a center, could be picked here. Nikola Djokovic, that I had the Bulls taking. If the Bulls don't take him, I haven't anybody else take him here. I think this is a perfect San Antonio pick, and they might even be able to convince him to stay overseas for a year, so that they're not bringing in 3 rookies in one season. So that could make a lot of sense for them as well. That probably actually, if they keep the pick, that would probably be a good one if the Bulls didn't already pick him.
All right, number 26, we have Houston.
Houston, like we said earlier, they're trying. They got this so that they could try to trade up. So this is probably going to be their pick anyway. But if they do keep it, I've already had them take a power forward and a wing. So now I'm just looking for depth at the guard position. So Terry or Andrew Nebhard are the 2 point guards that it would make sense at this point. Nebhard's from Gonzaga. Terry, who I mentioned, from Arizona. So it'll probably be one of those two if they keep the pick. If they don't keep the pick, who knows who it would be? It's hard to tell. A lot of trade potential. So.
Okay. Next we have number 27, Miami.
Yeah, Miami. A lot of talk. Miami might try to get rid of this pick because they don't want, because of cap space reasons. They don't want to pay luxury tax on a number 28 pick. So a lot of talk. They might try to trade, like what I mentioned with San Antonio, trade for a future first rounder. If not, I have them looking at guard depth again. So same ones I just mentioned for Houston: Terry, Andrew Nebhard, or maybe a shooter, Trevon Keels from Duke, 3-point shooter. Add some shooting to your team. You can always use that. So if they keep the pick.
All right, number 28, we have Golden State.
Golden State, same thing as everybody else. They are looking, or these last few that I've been talking about, this point of the draft, there's a lot of teams looking to get out. They don't want a pick. They're cap strapped already, and it's making it very hard to do free agency for them. So they'd rather have the money in free agency than to use it on a draft pick at this late in the stage, from what the rumors are out there. So I think they're going to try to get rid of it. But if they keep it, a lot of talk, maybe Walker Kessler, or Christian Braun are 2 names that I've seen linked to them. Kessler's a center, so with Wiseman having the injury this year, not sure if he's going to be a long-term fit or not. He might also be involved in some trades if they want to do a trade. So Kessler could fit to take Wiseman's spot. Or Christian Braun is another shooter that kind of fits that Kansas City, fits the mold of Golden State, with a shooter on the wing. They got a lot of those guys. Jordan Poole might be looking to move on. They might not be able to keep him because of his contract. So let him move on, and Braun can take his spot. So one of those 2 guys maybe, but most likely they're going to try to get out of that pick.
All right, number 29, we have Memphis.
So again, we talked about them earlier having the need for point guard. So if they don't address the point guard there, then I think Andrew Nembhard could possibly still be there for them from Gonzaga. Otherwise, guys that I just mentioned the last couple of picks, Christian Braun and Trevor Keels are the shooters. I think you'll add shooters for depth purposes is probably what they'll do.
All right, number 30, Denver.
Denver, last pick in the first round. Probably won't be Denver. Probably going to either trade up like they're trying to do, or trade out of the draft altogether would be my guess. But if they do pick, I think Jake Larvia from Wake Forest and David Rhodey from Colorado State, both are power forwards. I think they could use some depth at that position. That basically you would be placing Green, who you traded for that pick, with a younger, more affordable contract. So those would be the 2 that I think they'll take if they keep the pick, but again, likely to trade. So,
all right, round 2.
Let's not do round 2.
Okay.
I think that's enough. Okay, so here's what we know about round 2. Round 2 almost always produces 1 or 2 stars. They're impossible to predict, and the majority of the people don't make their team. So
okay,
we're not going to worry about round 2. We're just going to go. That was good enough, I think. As we, I think the overall, lots of trades. There's a lot of 3-and-D guys. There's very few point guards and very few centers, which is why the few that are like high-notch ones are what people are looking to trade for. So, looking for that. I'm thinking it's going to be a wild and crazy time, like just because of all the trades. But if you're an Oklahoma City fan, yeah, get excited because you're probably going to get a couple of really good players, especially if they can trade it and get in the top 10 again. And these are the young guys. They're going to be the core of the next group. They're rebuilding that like they did the
next
first
group
time.
that we use to get future draft picks, so that
Well,
we can get the next group
Hey,
of people to get
they got
future
you.
draft
They
picks.
got you too. They got you to a Western Conference final. They got you to the NBA final. So maybe this next group is the one that punches it through. You don't know. You don't know. But I think that that's what they're doing. If you're a Bulls fan like myself, we're looking for those complementary pieces to go with Levine and DeRozan. I think that they're going to probably use 18 to try to find one of those pieces. So it might be a boring draft night because they might not even have a pick. But a lot of teams are in that situation. It's an interesting year. There's a lot of teams that are kind of in that, like they're close but not there. They're trying to trade. They don't want to get younger. And there's only a few teams that are really in that rebuild mode. And so I think it's going to make an interesting year for the trades. It's also a year where there's like a top 4 that's definite. And then after that, from like 5 to 22 is all like, who knows? So I think that makes for an interesting draft because you don't know. There's probably players that I didn't even mention that are going to get drafted in the first round because that usually happens. Teams fall in love with a guy. NBA teams are really hard to get a read on sometimes because they like to keep things really close to the vest. So, there's rumors of different guys having guarantees. I never really pay attention to that because I've never seen it, or I shouldn't say never, but it rarely pays out. So we'll see. Should be a fun draft. Hoping to do a video after the draft to kind of talk about it. Maybe even my son, who was in one of our earlier videos, who's a big NBA fan, he might be here in time for me to do a reaction video with him. We'll see how his travel plans work out. If not, I'll come on and tell Nate why he should be excited about the guys that the Thunder picked, and I'll talk about how the Bulls didn't do anything. Anyway, if you have any thoughts, comments, let us know.
Thanks for giving us a watch, and give us a like, give us a subscribe if you got anything out of this content, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.
And especially if you have a team that you're interested in, you want us to talk about in the draft recap a little deeper. I'm only going to focus on our 2 teams unless somebody comments that they want to hear that. And then I'll put a little extra focus on a team if you want to throw it in the comments for when we do our draft recap.